Bradley Hutchinson slid the termination letter across his mahogany desk like he was serving a death sentence. Outside his corner office, Chicago's November wind rattled the windows of Midwest Industrial Solutions, making his words sound even sharper than usual. My name is Frank Morrison. I'm 67 years old, and I'd given 35 years of my life to this company. In exactly 15 days, I would have qualified for my full retirement package, $127,000 in accumulated benefits plus my pension. Instead, I was sitting in this sterile executive suite listening to a 42-year-old MBA tell me my career was over. We're restructuring the entire operations division, Bradley continued, adjusting his Armani tie. Sign the severance by Friday, or walk away with nothing. I stared at the documents spread before me. Standard termination paperwork, a pathetic severance offer of 8 weeks' pay, and a non-compete clause that would blacklist me from the industry for 18 months. The kind of package designed to make older employees disappear quietly. Understood, I said, standing up. Bradley blinked. He'd probably expected me to beg, threaten, or break down. Instead, I shook his hand and walked out. The factory floor felt different that Thursday afternoon. 35 years of walking these aisles, training new hires, solving problems that management never knew existed. I'd been here when old Frank Kowalski ran the place from a cluttered office overlooking the production line. I'd survived the plant explosion in 2019, the recession that nearly killed us in 2009, and 4 different computer system overhauls. Now Bradley Hutchinson, hired 8 months ago from some consulting firm in Boston, was optimizing human resources, getting rid of what he called legacy overhead. I packed my desk slowly. 35 years doesn't fit in one cardboard box, but I managed. The coffee mug my daughter Sarah bought me for Father's Day. The photo of my late wife Margaret at the company Christmas party in 2018. A stack of safety awards and productivity certificates that once meant everything. Miguel Santos, one of the welders I'd trained, stopped by as I sealed the box. "Mr. Morrison, this ain't right," he said quietly. "Everyone knows you should get those benefits. Sometimes life throws you curveballs, Miguel," I replied, but inside, something was already stirring. Something that told me this fight wasn't over. I drove home through Chicago traffic in my old Ford F-150, thinking about phone calls I needed to make. Margaret had been gone 3 years now, but I could still hear her voice. "Frank Morrison, you never back down from anything important in your life. Don't start now." That evening, I called my nephew David Chen, a labor attorney in downtown Chicago who specialized in employment discrimination. We'd stayed close since Margaret's funeral, and he'd always said, "Uncle Frank, if anyone at that company ever tries to screw you over, call me first." "Uncle Frank, what's going on?" David answered on the second ring. I told him about Bradley, about the timing, about the insulting severance offer. David listened without interrupting, asking only specific questions about my employment contract and company policies. "Uncle Frank," he said finally, "don't sign anything yet. Can you scan those documents and email them to me tonight? You think there's something there. I think Bradley Hutchinson just made the biggest mistake of his career. And if I'm right, it's going to cost Midwest Industrial a hell of a lot more than $127,000. The next morning, I did something I'd never done in 35 years. I called in sick. Instead of going to work, I drove to David's office in the Loop. His firm occupied 2 floors of a gleaming downtown tower, all glass and steel and expensive artwork. "Bradley screwed up big time," David said, spreading my employment documents across his conference table. "Look at this, Employee Protection Policy 7.4c. Any worker within 30 days of retirement eligibility cannot be terminated without documented cause and board approval. I'd helped draft that policy back in 2011 when we had problems with employees getting pushed out right before their pensions vested. I wrote this," I said slowly. "Exactly, and Bradley either doesn't know about it, or he's gambling you won't fight back. But here's what really pisses me off." David pulled out a yellow legal pad covered in notes. "I spent yesterday making calls. In the past 10 months, Bradley has terminated 6 employees who were within 60 days of major retirement milestones." My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. 6. Robert Martinez from Quality Control, 64 years old, fired 3 weeks before his 30-year pension bonus. Linda Thompson from accounting, 61, terminated 2 months before early retirement eligibility. I've got 4 more just like them. The names hit me like punches. These weren't just statistics, they were people I'd worked alongside for decades. Robert had taught me welding techniques when I first started. Linda had helped me navigate the paperwork when Margaret got sick. David, how is this legal? It's not. This is systematic age discrimination, and we're going to nail Bradley Hutchinson to the wall. David explained his strategy over lunch at Gibson's Steakhouse. We needed documentation, witness testimony, and proof of systematic discrimination. Most importantly, we needed the other victims to join our case. I've already reached out to 3 of the terminated employees, David said, cutting into his ribeye. 2 are interested in fighting back, and one of them, Robert Martinez, he's got something you're going to love. What kind of something? He recorded a conversation with Bradley. On his iPhone, Bradley explicitly talked about clearing out the deadwood before they became too expensive. I nearly choked on my burger. Robert recorded him. Robert's always been careful, methodical. When Bradley started asking weird questions about his retirement timeline, Robert got suspicious and started documenting everything. That afternoon, I drove to Robert's house in Oak Park. He lived in a modest bungalow with a perfectly maintained lawn and a Chicago Bears flag by the front door. When he answered, he looked older than his 64 years, worn down by months of unemployment. "Frank, I heard what they did to you," he said, inviting me in for coffee. "Same damn thing they did to me." We talked for 3 hours. Robert had worked at Midwest Industrial since 1989, building a reputation as the most skilled welder in the plant's history. When Bradley arrived, he immediately questioned Robert's methods, claiming they were inefficient and costly. "He called me into his office last March," Robert said. "Told me the company was pivoting toward a younger demographic and needed people who could adapt to modern manufacturing paradigms. When I asked what that meant, he said, 'Honestly, Robert, we need fewer gray hairs and more fresh energy.'" Robert played the recording on his iPhone. Bradley's voice was clear, casual, and completely damning. "I figured I might need proof," Robert said. "Turns out I was right." That evening, I called David with a simple message: "File everything. Let's end this." By Friday morning, we had our smoking gun. By Friday afternoon, we had our strategy. By Friday evening, Bradley Hutchinson was about to learn that some old-timers know exactly how to fight back. Monday morning changed everything. Instead of going to Midwest Industrial, I drove to David's office and spent the day finalizing our legal assault. By 10 a.m., we'd filed a formal complaint with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission alleging systematic age discrimination. By noon, we'd submitted a class action lawsuit in federal court seeking damages for 7 wrongfully terminated employees. By 2 p.m., David had called Human Resources directly. I explained the situation to Patricia Williams, the HR director, David told me after hanging up. "She's been with the company for 18 years, and she knows exactly what's been happening. She also knows that if this goes to trial, her department is going to look either incompetent or complicit." What did she say? She asked for 24 hours to review the employee files and consult with corporate legal counsel. Translation: she's panicking. I drove home feeling like we'd crossed the Rubicon. There was no going back now. Either we'd win this fight, or Bradley would make sure I never worked again. Saturday morning, I got a call from Miguel Santos. "Mr. Morrison, something crazy's happening here." Bradley called an emergency meeting Friday afternoon, brought in a bunch of lawyers from some fancy firm downtown. Today he's been going through personnel files all morning, and Patricia's been locked in meetings with the legal team since yesterday. "Miguel, be careful. Don't do anything that could get you fired." "I know, but I thought you should know. Word is Bradley's real upset about something. And Frank, the guys on the floor are all talking about what happened to you and Robert and the others. People are pissed." Sunday evening, David called with news that made my heart race. Patricia Williams wants to meet tomorrow morning. She's bringing corporate legal counsel, and she wants to discuss a potential resolution before this goes any further. What kind of resolution? The kind where they admit they made mistakes and try to fix them before a federal judge makes them pay punitive damages. "Frank, I think we've got them." Monday morning, I put on my best suit, the navy blue one Margaret had bought me for Sarah's wedding, and drove to David's office. Patricia Williams arrived at 9 a.m. with two lawyers I didn't recognize. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. "Frank," she said, shaking my hand, "I want you to know that what happened to you and the others was not authorized company policy. Bradley acted without proper consultation with human resources or legal counsel." One of the lawyers, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, took over. "Mr. Morrison, my client is prepared to offer a comprehensive settlement that includes full retirement benefits for all affected employees, plus additional compensation for the hardship caused by these improper terminations." David leaned forward. "And Mr. Hutchinson's employment status?" The lawyers exchanged glances. "Mr. Hutchinson is no longer with Midwest Industrial Solutions. His termination was effective as of close of business Friday." I felt something release in my chest. Bradley was gone. But we were just getting started. The settlement negotiations took 4 hours, but by the end, I had everything I'd been denied and more. My $127,000 retirement package, plus interest. 2 years of deferred contributions that the company had been quietly withholding. A formal apology that would go in my personnel file. And most importantly, Robert Martinez and the 5 other terminated employees would receive similar compensation. But the real victory came Tuesday morning when I received a call from James Patterson, the founder and former CEO of Midwest Industrial Solutions. "Frank, I heard about what happened with Bradley. I'm sorry, that's not the kind of company I built. It's being handled, Mr. Patterson. I know. The board asked me to come back as interim CEO while we search for Bradley's replacement. Frank, I want to ask you something. Would you consider staying on as a consultant? We need someone with your experience to help rebuild the trust Bradley destroyed." I looked out my kitchen window at the oak tree Margaret had planted when we first bought the house. Its leaves were turning gold and red, ready for winter. "I appreciate the offer, Mr. Patterson, but I think it's time for me to retire properly." "I understand. But Frank, I want you to know something. The board is implementing new policies to make sure this never happens again. No employee within 60 days of retirement eligibility can be terminated without unanimous board approval. And we're requiring all senior management to complete training on age discrimination and employment law." "That's good to hear. There's something else. The board voted to name the new employee protection policy after you. The Frank Morrison Fair Employment Protection Act. It'll be part of every new employee orientation from now on." Wednesday afternoon, I drove to Midwest Industrial Solutions one last time. Not to clean out my desk or turn in equipment, but to pick up my final retirement paperwork and settlement check. Patricia Williams met me in the lobby. She handed me an envelope and a small wooden plaque. "From all of us who are staying," she said. "Thank you for fighting for what was right." The plaque read, "Frank Morrison, 35 years of dedicated service. A man who stood up for all of us." I walked through the factory floor one more time. Miguel Santos and several other workers stopped their tasks to shake my hand. They knew what had happened, and they knew Bradley was gone. "You did it, Mr. Morrison," Miguel said. "You got that bastard." "We all did it, Miguel. Don't let anyone push you around like that again." Thursday morning, I deposited my settlement check at First National Bank, $184,750. Not just the retirement benefits Bradley tried to steal, but everything the company had quietly deferred over the years, plus punitive damages for the illegal termination. I spent the afternoon meeting with a financial advisor about my actual retirement plans. For the first time in months, I could think about the future without worrying about legal bills or finding another job at 67. Friday brought a call from Robert Martinez. "Frank, I wanted to thank you. Got my settlement yesterday, $156,000 plus interest. Bradley cost me 4 months of retirement, but now I'm better off than if he'd never messed with me." "What are you going to do now, Robert?" "My grandson's been asking me to teach him about welding. Think I'll set up a workshop in my garage. Maybe take on a few custom projects." "What about you?" "Margaret always wanted to see the Grand Canyon. I think I'm going to buy a motor home." That weekend, Sarah drove down from Milwaukee with her family. We had dinner at the kitchen table where I'd first read Bradley's termination letter. My grandson played with his toy trucks on the floor while we talked. "Dad, I'm proud of you for fighting back," Sarah said. Mom would have been proud too. I thought about Margaret, about the retirement plans we'd made together. She'd wanted to travel, to see the national parks, to spend time with our grandchildren without worrying about work schedules. "I think I'm going to buy that Winnebago," I told Sarah. "Really? Mom always said you'd never retire." "Your mother was wrong about a lot of things," I said, smiling. "But she was right about the important stuff." Sunday evening, I sat on my back porch with a Miller Lite, watching the sunset through the oak tree's golden leaves. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear children playing, dogs barking, life continuing the way it should. Bradley Hutchinson had tried to steal 35 years of my life's work with one meeting and a termination letter. Instead, he'd given me something better, the knowledge that sometimes, when you stand up for what's right, you don't just win, you make sure it never happens to anyone else. 6 months later, I was sitting in my new Winnebago Brave at the south rim of the Grand Canyon, watching the sunrise paint the rocks in shades of red and gold that no photograph could capture. Margaret's ashes were in a small urn on the dashboard. She was finally seeing the sights she'd always dreamed about. My phone buzzed with a text from David. "Uncle Frank, thought you'd want to know. The Morrison Fair Employment Protection Act just prevented another company from pulling the same stunt. A 63-year-old engineer in Detroit cited your case, and the company immediately backed down. You're still fighting the good fight." I smiled, sipping my coffee as the sun climbed higher. Sometimes the hardest battles are the ones you never expected to fight. But they're also the ones that remind you who you really are. 3 days later, I was in Yellowstone, teaching my grandson how to fish in the same stream where Margaret and I had honeymooned 40 years ago. He was 8 years old, all energy and questions, just like his grandmother had been. "Grandpa, why did that mean man try to steal your money?" "Because he thought I was too old to fight back," I said, helping him cast his line. "But he was wrong. Are you glad you fought him?" I thought about Bradley Hutchinson, probably working at some other company, hopefully having learned his lesson. I thought about Robert Martinez, happy in his garage workshop. I thought about the 6 other employees who got their justice, and the future employees who would be protected by the policy that bore my name. Yeah, kid, I'm glad I fought him. Sometimes standing up for what's right is the most important thing you can do. The fish were biting that morning, and my grandson caught his first rainbow trout. As we cleaned it together by the stream, I realized that Margaret had been right about retirement after all. It wasn't about stopping work, it was about starting the rest of your life. And thanks to Bradley Hutchinson's greed and stupidity, the rest of my life was going to be just fine. This story is inspired by real cases of age discrimination in corporate America. The Frank Morrison Fair Employment Protection Act is fictional, but similar policies exist in many companies today. If you're facing age discrimination, document everything and consult with an employment attorney. Sometimes the old-timers know exactly how to fight back.